What if I told you most of your decisions are not actually yours? They are controlled by emotions, fear, and the opinions of others, and that's exactly why people stay weak, confused, and easily manipulated. But 500 years ago, Machiavelli revealed a brutal truth. Clear thinkers don't follow emotions, they control them. So here's the question back, hand index pointing right. Are you thinking clearly, or are you just reacting like everyone else? Because by the end of this video, you'll start seeing people, decisions, and reality in a way you never have before. Most people don't live in reality, they live in a story. A story built from emotions, expectations, and comforting lies they've told themselves for years. And the dangerous part is, they don't even realize it. You see, the human mind is not designed to see truth. It is designed to protect you from discomfort. That means your brain will always choose what feels safe over what is real. And this is exactly where most people lose the ability to think clearly. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something that most people still refuse to accept today. People are not guided by truth, they are guided by perception. And perception can be manipulated. Think about it. How many times have you trusted someone because they seemed honest? How many times have you believed in an opportunity because it felt right? How many times have you ignored red flags just because you didn't want to face the truth? That's illusion. Reality doesn't care about how you feel. Reality doesn't adjust itself to your expectations. It operates on patterns, incentives, and human nature. And if you don't train yourself to see those things clearly, you will always be reacting instead of deciding. Machiavellian thinking begins at the moment you stop asking, "What do I want to believe?" and start asking, "What is actually happening here?" There is a huge difference. Because when you seek comfort, you become blind. But when you seek truth, you start noticing things others completely miss. You begin to see how people act differently when their interests change. You notice how loyalty fades when pressure increases. You realize that words mean nothing without consistent actions behind them, and slowly the illusion starts to break. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't want this level of clarity, because seeing reality clearly means accepting things you don't like. It means admitting that some people are not who you thought they were. It means realizing that fairness is not guaranteed, and good intentions don't protect you from bad outcomes. That's why people stay in denial. They ignore patterns, they justify behavior, they create excuses, because accepting reality requires mental strength, and most people choose emotional comfort instead. But if you want to think clearly, you have to train yourself to detach from that comfort. You have to start questioning everything, not in a paranoid way, but in a strategic way. When someone makes a promise, don't just listen to the words, observe their past behavior. When an opportunity appears perfect, don't get excited, analyze the risks. When something feels right, pause and ask yourself, is it actually right, or do I just want it to be? This is where clarity begins, because clear thinkers don't get hypnotized by appearances. They don't fall for surface-level impressions. They go deeper. They look for patterns, contradictions, and underlying motives. They understand that every action has a reason behind it, and that reason is usually self-interest. And once you start seeing the world through this lens, your decisions change completely. You stop trusting blindly. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop being surprised by outcomes that others call unexpected. Because for you, nothing is unexpected anymore. You saw it coming. That's the power of reality-based thinking. It doesn't make you negative, it makes you accurate. And accuracy is what gives you control, because when you see things as they are, not as you wish them to be, you make decisions that actually work. You choose people more carefully, you avoid unnecessary risks, you position yourself ahead of problems before they even appear. And most importantly, you stop being manipulated, because illusions are the tools of manipulation. People will always try to control how you see things. They will present themselves in a certain way, they will say what sounds right, they will create an image that benefits them. But if you are trained to look beyond the surface, none of that works on you anymore. You don't judge by appearance. You judge by patterns. You don't listen to promises. You observe consistency. You don't get carried away by emotions. You stay grounded in reality, and that is what separates a clear thinker from everyone else. A clear thinker is not smarter. They are simply more honest with themselves. They are willing to see what others avoid. They are willing to accept what others deny. And because of that, they operate with a level of awareness that most people never reach. And once you reach that level, you can never go back to seeing the world the same way again. Let's be honest. Most people don't make decisions. They react to what they feel in the moment: anger, fear, excitement, jealousy, ego. And in that reaction, they believe they are in control. But the truth is far more uncomfortable in that moment. They are the easiest to control, because emotions don't just influence your thinking, they hijack it. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that the quickest way to predict a person's behavior was not through logic but through emotion. Because when emotions rise, clarity disappears, and when clarity disappears, control is lost. Think about the last time you were angry. Your heart was racing, your mind was flooded, and in that moment you didn't think strategically, you thought impulsively. You said things you didn't plan. You made decisions you later questioned. You reacted instead of choosing. Now imagine someone observing you in that state. They don't need to fight you. They don't need to outsmart you. They simply need to trigger you, and you will do the rest yourself. That is the hidden weakness of emotional thinking. It makes you predictable. When someone knows what triggers your anger, they can control your reactions. When they understand your fears, they can manipulate your decisions. When they recognize your ego, they can provoke you into mistakes. And the worst part is, you won't even realize it's happening, because emotions feel real. They feel justified. They convince you that you are right, even when you are completely off track. This is why Machiavellian thinking is not about suppressing emotions. It's about mastering them. Because you cannot remove emotion from being human, but you can decide whether emotion controls you or you control it. There is a powerful shift that happens when you start observing your emotions instead of obeying them. Instead of reacting instantly, you pause. Instead of speaking immediately, you stay silent. Instead of acting impulsively, you analyze. And in that small gap between emotion and action, that is where clarity lives. Most people never create that gap. They feel something, and within seconds they act on it. No filter, no strategy, no awareness, and that is exactly why they repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Clear thinkers operate differently. When they feel anger, they don't explode, they question it. They ask themselves, why am I feeling this? What is actually happening here? And that simple act of questioning weakens the emotional grip. When they feel fear, they don't retreat immediately, they analyze it. They ask, is this a real threat, or just discomfort, and that distinction changes everything. When they feel excitement, they don't rush blindly, they slow down, because they understand that excitement can be just as dangerous as fear. This level of control doesn't come naturally. It requires discipline, it requires awareness, and most importantly, it requires honesty with yourself. Because many times, the emotion you feel is not about the situation, it's about your ego. Someone disagrees with you, and you feel disrespected. Someone succeeds, and you feel threatened. Someone challenges you, and you feel the need to prove something. But if you strip away the emotion, you realize it's not the situation controlling you. It's your internal reaction to it. And once you understand that, you stop giving others that power, because emotional control is power. The person who can remain calm while others lose control automatically has the advantage. They see clearly while others are blinded. They think strategically while others react impulsively, and in any situation, whether it's business, relationships, or conflict, the calm mind always wins. But let's go deeper. Emotional control is not just about staying calm in intense situations. It's about understanding how emotions distort your perception of reality. When you are angry, everything looks like a threat. When you are afraid, everything looks like a risk. When you are overly confident, everything looks like an opportunity. Your emotional state shapes what you see. And if you are not aware of that, you are not seeing reality at all. You are seeing a version of reality filtered through your feelings. That is dangerous, because it means your decisions are not based on what is true. They are based on how you feel in that moment. And feelings change. One day you feel confident, the next day you feel uncertain. One moment you trust someone, the next moment you doubt them. If your decisions are tied to those shifting emotions, your direction will always be unstable. Machiavellian thinking demands stability. It demands that you become the same person in chaos and in calm, that you think clearly whether you are under pressure or completely relaxed. Because consistency in thinking leads to consistency in results, and that consistency is built by controlling your internal state. Now, imagine this: someone tries to provoke you, they expect a reaction, they expect anger, defensiveness, or frustration. But instead, you stay calm, you observe, you respond with precision. In that moment, something shifts. They lose control because they can't predict you anymore, and unpredictability is power. The more emotionally stable you become, the harder it is for anyone to manipulate you. Their usual tactics stop working, their attempts to trigger you fail, and suddenly you are no longer playing their game, you are controlling your own. But this level of control comes with a cost. It means you cannot always act on what you feel. It means you have to hold back when your instinct tells you to react. It means you have to think when your mind wants to rush, and that is uncomfortable because reacting is easy. Controlling yourself is hard. Reacting gives you instant relief. Control requires patience, but the difference in outcomes is massive. One leads to regret, the other leads to power. And once you experience the advantage of emotional control, once you see how differently people respond to you when you remain calm, calculated, and composed, you start to realize something important. The real battle is never external. It is always internal. Because the moment you master your emotions, no one else can use them against you anymore. Most people don't make decisions based on what works. They make decisions based on what feels comfortable. They choose the easy path, the familiar option, the one that gives immediate relief, and in that moment it feels right. It feels justified, it feels safe, but comfort is one of the most dangerous illusions you can rely on. Because what feels good now often creates problems later. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this better than most. He saw that people are naturally drawn toward short-term pleasure and away from short-term pain, and because of that, they consistently make decisions that weaken them over time. They avoid difficult conversations to keep peace and end up losing respect. They delay hard choices to stay comfortable and end up trapped in worse situations. They follow what feels right in the moment and regret it when the consequences arrive. This is the pattern of reactive thinking. It is driven by comfort, not by outcomes. And if you want to think clearly, you have to break that pattern completely. Because clear thinkers don't ask, what feels right now? They ask something far more powerful. What will this lead to? That one question changes everything, because the moment you start thinking in consequences, your perspective shifts. You stop looking at decisions as isolated moments, and you start seeing them as part of a chain reaction. Every action leads to another outcome, and that outcome leads to another and another. Most people never look beyond the first step. They see the immediate reward, but they ignore the long-term cost. They see the short-term discomfort, but they miss the long-term gain. And this is why they stay stuck, because they are playing a short game in a long game world. Machiavellian thinking forces you to zoom out. It forces you to look beyond the present moment and ask, if I do this, what happens next? And after that, and after that. Now, suddenly, decisions become clearer. Because when you follow the chain of consequences, you begin to see where each path leads. Imagine you are in a situation where someone disrespects you. Your immediate emotional reaction might be to respond aggressively, to prove a point, to defend your ego. And in the moment, that feels powerful. But if you think one step ahead, you start to see the consequences. Escalation, conflict, damage to your reputation, loss of strategic positioning. Now go further. What happens after that conflict? What opportunities close? What relationships shift? What image do you create for yourself? Suddenly, that powerful reaction doesn't look so powerful anymore. Now consider the opposite. You stay calm, you don't react emotionally, you respond with control, or you choose silence. In the moment, that might feel uncomfortable. It might feel like you're holding back, like you're not defending yourself. But think ahead. You maintain control, you observe more, you position yourself strategically, you allow the other person to reveal more of themselves. And over time, that decision gives you leverage. This is the difference between reacting for comfort and deciding for consequences. One is emotional, the other is strategic, and this applies to every area of life. In work, people choose tasks that feel easy instead of tasks that create growth. In relationships, they avoid honesty because it feels uncomfortable. In personal decisions, they chase quick rewards instead of building long-term value. And every time they choose comfort, they pay for it later, because comfort is temporary, consequences are permanent. Clear thinkers understand this deeply. They are willing to experience short-term discomfort because they are focused on long-term outcomes. They are willing to make hard decisions now to avoid bigger problems later. They don't run from difficulty, they use it. Because difficulty is often the price of better consequences. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Thinking in consequences doesn't just protect you from bad decisions. It gives you an advantage over others. Because most people are predictable, They will choose comfort. They will avoid pain. They will react emotionally. And because of that, their actions become easy to anticipate. When you think differently, you step outside that pattern. You start seeing what others will do before they do it. You can predict reactions. You can anticipate mistakes. You can position yourself ahead of outcomes that others don't even see coming, and that is where real power comes from. Not from reacting faster, but from thinking further. Because when you can see 3 steps ahead while others are stuck on the first step, you are no longer playing at the same level. You are operating strategically, but this kind of thinking requires discipline, because your mind will constantly try to pull you back to comfort. It will tell you to take the easy option, to avoid the hard choice, to follow what feels right instead of what works. And if you are not aware of that, you will fall back into the same patterns as everyone else. That's why you have to train yourself to pause before every important decision. Not to hesitate, but to analyze, to ask yourself, what are the real consequences of this choice? Not just the immediate result, but the long-term impact. Because every decision you make is shaping your future, whether you realize it or not. And once you start seeing decisions this way, something changes. You become more intentional. You stop acting randomly. You stop being driven by impulse. You start moving with purpose. And when your actions are guided by consequences instead of comfort, your results become more consistent, more predictable, and far more powerful. Because while others are chasing what feels good now, you are building what works later, and that difference is what separates those who stay stuck from those who move ahead consistently. Most people think power comes from speaking, from expressing opinions, proving points, dominating conversations, being heard in every room they walk into. They believe that the more they say, the more control they have. But the reality is the complete opposite. The more you speak, the more you reveal. And the more you reveal, the easier it becomes for others to understand you, predict you, and eventually control you. Niccolò Machiavelli understood a principle that most people ignore. Information is power, but only when it is controlled. And the fastest way to lose control of information is by talking too much. Think about it. When you speak freely, you expose your thoughts, your intentions, your emotions, your weaknesses. You show people what matters to you, what triggers you, what you care about, and what you fear. You give them the blueprint of your mind. And once someone has that blueprint, they don't need to guess anymore. They know exactly how to approach you, how to influence you, and how to position themselves around you. This is why silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy, because when you speak less, something powerful happens. You start to observe more. You notice tone, body language, hesitation, contradictions. You start seeing what people are not saying, not just what they are saying. And that is where the real information exists. Most people are too busy thinking about what they are going to say next. They are focused on responding, not understanding. They listen just enough to reply, not enough to analyze. And because of that, they miss everything. They miss the subtle signals. They miss the hidden intentions. They miss the inconsistencies that reveal the truth. But when you train yourself to stay quiet, you create space. Space to think, space to watch, space to understand, and in that space, your awareness sharpens. You begin to see patterns in how people behave. You notice how someone changes their tone depending on who they are talking to. You catch small delays before answers. You recognize when words don't match actions, and slowly, people start revealing themselves to you without even realizing it. Because the more comfortable someone feels, the more they talk, and the more they talk, the more they expose. This is why silence gives you an advantage. While others are busy proving themselves, you are learning about them. While others are expressing everything, you are collecting information. While others are trying to control the conversation, you are controlling the understanding of it. And that understanding is far more valuable than any words you could say. But there is another layer to this. Speaking less doesn't just help you observe others, it also gives weight to your own words. When someone talks constantly, their words lose value. People stop paying attention. They become predictable, repetitive, easy to ignore. But when someone speaks rarely, every word carries impact. People listen more carefully. They take it more seriously. They remember it, because scarcity creates value. And this applies to communication as well. When you control, when you speak, and what you say, you create presence. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to dominate the room. Your restraint itself creates authority. Because people sense that you are not reacting, you are choosing, and that choice signals control. Now think about the opposite. Someone who feels the need to respond to everything, to defend every point, to explain every action, to fill every silence. That person is not in control. They are being pulled by the situation, by other people, by their own need to be understood or validated. And that need becomes a weakness, because anyone who understands that can use it. They can provoke you into speaking. They can pressure you into revealing more than you should. They can create situations where your own words work against you. And it all happens because you didn't control your silence. Machiavellian thinking teaches you to break this habit, to become comfortable with silence, to resist the urge to fill every gap with words, because silence is not empty. It is active, it is observation, it is analysis, it is control, and the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. You start noticing things you never saw before. You start understanding people on a deeper level. You start responding instead of reacting. And your communication becomes sharper, more precise, more effective. Because now, when you speak, it is intentional. You are not speaking to express emotion. You are not speaking to impress. You are not speaking to seek validation. You are speaking to achieve a specific outcome. Every word has a purpose. Every sentence is calculated. Every response is controlled, and that level of precision changes how people perceive you. They start seeing you as someone who thinks before speaking, someone who cannot be easily read, someone who cannot be easily influenced, and that creates a form of quiet power. But this kind of power requires discipline, because your instinct will always push you to speak, to explain yourself, to defend yourself, to prove your point, to show that you know something. And every time you give in to that instinct, you lose a piece of control. That's why you have to train yourself to pause, to ask yourself, is it necessary to say this? Not do I want to say this, but does it serve a purpose? Because not everything needs to be said. Not every thought needs to be expressed. Not every situation requires your reaction. And once you understand that, your entire approach to communication changes. You stop wasting words. You stop revealing unnecessary information. You stop reacting to every stimulus around you. And instead, you start choosing your moments. You start speaking when it matters. You start using silence as a tool, not as a gap to fill. And in doing so, you gain something most people never develop: clarity through observation, control through restraint. An awareness that goes far beyond what is visible on the surface, because when you observe more and speak less, you are no longer just part of the conversation, you are understanding the game behind it. So now you see the difference. Most people move through life reacting, trusting what they feel, choosing what is easy, and revealing everything without realizing the cost. And because of that, they stay confused, predictable, and easy to influence. But the moment you start thinking like Niccolò Machiavelli, everything changes. You stop chasing comfort and start analyzing consequences. You stop reacting emotionally and start controlling your responses. You stop believing appearances and start seeing reality. You stop talking endlessly and start observing strategically. And with each of these shifts, your mind becomes sharper. Clear thinking is not about intelligence, it's about discipline. It's about training yourself to see what others ignore, to pause where others react, and to think where others feel. Because in a world full of noise, emotion, and illusion, the person who can stay calm, see clearly, and act with precision holds a silent advantage over everyone else. And once you develop that level of awareness, decisions become easier, people become predictable, and life stops feeling random. You are no longer reacting to the world, you are understanding it.